Imagine for a moment a world without evil. No hatred, no cruelty, no injustice, no violence. A world where no one suffers, no one lies, no one betrays. At first, it sounds like paradise, an eternal utopia. But if you linger on that image for too long, the picture becomes strange, even unsettling. Without evil, could we truly understand what good is? If no one ever lied, would honesty mean anything? If no one ever suffered, would compassion still matter? This question, whether evil is necessary for good, has haunted philosophers, theologians, and psychologists for centuries. And it is not just an abstract puzzle. It touches the very core of human nature. Why does cruelty exist? Why do we fail each other, hurt each other, sometimes even enjoy destruction? And if a world without evil is imaginable, why has it never been realized? The duality of good and evil is woven into the fabric of our lives. Every culture, every religion, every myth has grappled with it. But here's the deeper mystery. Perhaps good and evil are not enemies at all, but mirror images, each giving shape and meaning to the other. To understand this, we need to journey through philosophy, psychology, and the shadows of human history. Let's begin with the ancient roots. In Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest religions, the universe is depicted as a battleground between Ahura Mazda, the force of light and goodness, and Angra Mainyu, the spirit of darkness and evil. Humanity's role was to align with the light, to strengthen good against evil. This dualistic vision echoed through later traditions, from Christianity's God and Satan to the yin and yang of Chinese philosophy. But notice something subtle. In yin and yang, darkness is not condemned. It is necessary. Yin, the shadow, the passive, the receptive, balances yang, the active, the bright, the forceful. Harmony is not the elimination of darkness, but its integration with light. Already we see two visions emerging. One that sees evil as a cosmic mistake to be defeated, and another that sees it as an inseparable counterpart to good. Now let's step into philosophy. Thinkers like Plato believed evil was a kind of ignorance, a failure to grasp the form of the good. In this view, no one chooses evil knowingly. They simply mistake it for good. A thief doesn't crave evil, but craves wealth, believing it will bring happiness. For Plato, the cure for evil is knowledge, enlightenment. Centuries later, St. Augustine argued something similar. Evil has no independent existence. It is a privation, a lack of good, like darkness is a lack of light. According to him, evil is not a necessary counterpart, but a distortion, a hole in the fabric of being. Good is real, evil is its absence. But not all philosophers agreed. Friedrich Nietzsche turned this upside down. He argued that labeling things as good and evil was a human invention, often used by the weak to restrain the strong. What we call evil, he said, may simply be expressions of vitality, strength, or creativity that don't fit society's moral codes. For Nietzsche, trying to erase evil risked erasing the very forces that drive greatness. Without struggle, without opposition, without shadow, there is no growth. Psychology takes this question even deeper. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, believed that every person carries a shadow, the hidden, darker side of the psyche. It contains impulses we reject, desires we suppress, qualities we disown. But Jung warned, the more we deny the shadow, the stronger it becomes. Evil, then, isn't just out there in dictators or criminals. It lives inside each of us. And paradoxically, confronting it, integrating it, is part of becoming whole. One does not become enlightened, Jung wrote, by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Evil may be necessary not because it's good in itself, but because it reveals the depth of our humanity. Without facing cruelty, we cannot develop compassion. Without temptation, we cannot cultivate discipline. Without vulnerability to hate, love itself loses urgency. But let's pause. If evil is necessary for good, does that mean atrocities, wars, genocides, crimes are justified? Of course not. That's where the danger lies in oversimplifying this paradox. The existence of evil may help define good, but that doesn't mean we should glorify or excuse it. Suffering can teach, yes, but it can also destroy. Some wounds don't build character, they simply scar. The philosopher Hannah Arendt, reflecting on the horrors of the Holocaust, coined the phrase, the banality of evil. She observed that evil isn't always dramatic or monstrous. Sometimes it's ordinary people, following orders, avoiding responsibility, failing to think deeply. Evil in this sense arises not from necessity, but from negligence, from the failure to resist conformity. Her insight complicates the question. If evil can be so banal, is it really necessary? Or is it simply a danger we must remain vigilant against? Now let's ground this in the everyday. Think of betrayal. When someone lies to you, it hurts deeply. But that pain also clarifies what honesty means. It's in the contrast that values sharpen. Or think of courage. It only exists because fear exists. If nothing ever frightened us, bravery would vanish. Compassion only shines because suffering exists to call it forth. In this sense, good often grows as a response to evil. But this raises another uncomfortable question. Could we imagine a world where good exists without the catalyst of evil? Could we know joy without ever knowing pain? Some argue yes, that goodness could exist in a pure form, radiant and self-sufficient. But others argue no, that without contrast, concepts dissolve. Just as we know up because there is down, perhaps we know good only because there is evil. Science adds yet another perspective. Evolutionary psychology suggests that traits we label as evil, aggression, selfishness, dominance, had survival value. Without aggression, early humans couldn't defend territory or resources. Without selfishness, individuals might not have survived to reproduce. In this light, evil is not metaphysical, it's biological. And what we call good, altruism, cooperation, evolved alongside, because survival required both. Good and evil, then, are two strategies interwoven into our DNA. But modern life complicates this. Traits once useful can become destructive. Aggression that defended a tribe becomes violence in cities. Selfishness that ensured survival becomes greed in economies. The challenge is not erasing the dark impulses but redirecting them, transmuting them into creativity, resilience, and drive. Here's another loop. What about the moral imagination? Stories and myths across cultures often dramatize the battle between good and evil. But notice how often the villain is as important as the hero. Without Voldemort, Harry Potter has no story. Without Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker has no arc. Without evil, narratives collapse. This isn't just entertainment, it reflects our psychological need for contrast. Heroes are forged in struggle, virtues are proven against challenges. So perhaps evil is necessary not as a cosmic principle, but as a dramatic tension in the human story. It sets the stage for growth. It forces choices. It gives weight to morality. But let's not romanticize too quickly. Evil devastates real lives. Wars, cruelty, oppression. They leave scars that no philosophy can soften. To say evil is necessary can sound dangerously close to excusing it. So the key is nuance. Evil may be inevitable, given human freedom and complexity. But that does not make it desirable. What's necessary is not evil itself, but our confrontation with it, our refusal to let it define us. This is where moral philosophy lands. The presence of evil gives us the responsibility to choose good. Without freedom, there is no morality, only programming. A world without the possibility of evil would be a world without genuine goodness, because goodness chosen under constraint is not goodness at all. For good to be real, the alternative must exist. So, is evil necessary for good? The answer depends on how we frame the question. If by necessary we mean desirable, the answer is no. Suffering should never be glorified. But if we mean structurally necessary, part of the framework that allows good to shine, then yes, without shadow, there is no light. And perhaps the deeper lesson is this. The goal is not to eradicate evil completely, a fantasy that could itself turn tyrannical. The goal is to recognize its presence, both in the world and within ourselves, and to use that recognition as fuel for growth, empathy, and moral courage. Because in the end, good is not defined by the absence of evil, but by the choices we make in its presence. So I'll leave you with this. Imagine standing at a crossroads where two paths stretch before you, one shaped by cruelty, the other by compassion. Both exist, always. The silent truth of human life is that every day we walk between them. Evil reminds us of what's at stake. Good reminds us of what's possible. And perhaps the real measure of humanity is not whether evil exists, but how fiercely we choose the light despite the darkness. If this reflection stirred something in you, share it with someone who wrestles with the same questions. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the deepest puzzles of human nature and philosophy. And in the comments, let me know. Do you think evil is necessary for good? Or could goodness exist on its own?